The human diplomatic ship Harmony moved slowly through the dark space toward Nexus Prime Station. Captain James Reed stood on the bridge, watching the massive space station grow larger through the main screen. The station looked like a giant, wheels spinning in the void, with lights blinking along its outer ring. "Captain, we will dock in 20 minutes, said his navigation officer. Reed nodded. He had been dreading this moment for weeks. The Galactic Council had called for emergency peace talks, and somehow humanity had been chosen to help solve the problem. The Keth Empire and the Valen Federation were ready to go to war, and everyone expected the humans to fix it with words. The problem was simple. Nobody in the galaxy respected humans anymore. For over 100 years, humans had avoided every major conflict. While other species fought wars for territory and honor, humans always chose to talk instead of fight. Most aliens thought this made humans weak and cowardly. Reed walked through the corridors of his ship toward the meeting room where Ambassador Lisa Torres was preparing for the negotiations. Torres had been working on this crisis for 3 months, sending messages back and forth between the angry alien governments. She looked tired. "Any good news?" Reed asked as he entered the room. Torres looked up from her datapad. "The Keth still want to invade 3 Valen star systems. The Valen still think their new weapons can destroy the entire Keth fleet. Neither side wants to listen to reason." Reed sat down across from her. "What do the other council members think? About us being here?" "They think we are the only species stupid enough to try," Torres said with a bitter smile. "The Keth call us cowards behind our backs. The Valen think we are too primitive to understand real warfare. But they let us try because nobody else wants to get involved." Through the window, Nexus Prime was now close enough to see the individual sections. The station served as neutral ground for all galactic species. It had meeting rooms, trade centers, and diplomatic offices. Most importantly, it had strict rules about weapons and fighting. "Docking complete," announced the ship's computer. Reed and Torres gathered their materials and headed for the airlock. As they walked through the station's corridors, Reed noticed how other aliens looked at them. Some showed open contempt. Others simply ignored them. A few Keth warriors actually laughed when they saw the human diplomats walking past. The main conference room was large and circular, with seats arranged around a central table. When Reed and Torres entered, the other delegates were already there. General Thrak represented the Keth Empire. He was a tall, muscular alien with dark red skin and sharp teeth. His uniform was covered with military decorations and weapons. Trade. Minister Ellen spoke for the Valen Federation. She was smaller than the Keth, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. Her people were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and smart battle strategies. "So the humans finally arrive," General Thrak said in his deep voice. "I wondered if you would run away before the meeting started." "We are here to help find peace," Torres replied calmly. "Both of your civilizations will suffer if this war begins." "Minister." Ellen touched her datapad. "The Keth have been threatening our colonies for months. We have tried to negotiate, but they only understand force. Your people steal our rightful territory," Thrak growled. "The Keth Empire has claimed those systems for generations. You build your cities there and expect us to do nothing." Reed watched the exchange with growing concern. Both aliens were already angry, and the real negotiations had not even started yet. He had seen this pattern before in smaller disputes. When species wanted to fight, they would find any excuse to avoid peaceful solutions. "Perhaps we could discuss compensation," Torres suggested. "The Valen could provide technology or trade agreements in exchange for recognition of their territorial claims." Thrak slammed his large fist on the table. "The Keth do not sell our birthright for alien machines. We take what is ours by strength and courage, and we will defend what is ours with superior firepower," Ellen added coldly. Our new plasma cannons can destroy Keth ships before they come within weapons range. Torres spent the next 4 hours proposing different solutions. She suggested territorial divisions, resource-sharing agreements, and joint colonization projects. Reed provided supporting data and historical examples of successful peaceful resolutions. But with each proposal, the aliens became more stubborn. Thrak kept talking about Keth honor and the glory of battle. Ellen kept mentioning Valen technological superiority and their right to expand. Neither side showed any real interest in avoiding war. During the break, Reed and Torres walked to the stations. Observation deck. Through the large windows, they could see both Keth and Valen warships positioned near the station. The ships stayed just outside the neutral zone, but their weapons were clearly visible. "They want this war," Torres said quietly. "Nothing we say will change their minds." "The Council knows that," Reed replied. "They sent us here so they could. Say they tried diplomacy before the shooting starts." When the negotiations resumed, the situation got worse. General Thrak began making personal insults about human weakness and cowardice. He told stories about how Keth warriors had defeated human explorers in past encounters. Minister Ellen did not defend the humans, instead suggesting that perhaps a more experienced species should handle such important matters. "Your people run from every fight," Thrak said, staring directly at Reed. "How can cowards understand the needs of true warriors?" Torres kept her voice steady. "Humans have survived many conflicts. We prefer to resolve disputes without bloodshed because we understand the real cost of war." "You understand only fear," Thrak replied. "When the fighting begins, humans will hide in their safe systems and wait for stronger species to decide the outcome." The final insult came when Minister Ellen suggested that humans should leave the negotiations entirely. "This is a matter between real military powers," she said. "Perhaps the humans could help with refugee relief after the war ends." Reed felt his anger rising, but Torres touched his arm in warning. Getting emotional would only prove the aliens' point about human weakness. Instead, she stood up calmly and gathered her materials. "This session is concluded," Torres announced. "We will report to the Galactic Council that both parties have rejected all peaceful solutions." As the aliens prepared to leave, Torres walked over to Reed. She spoke quietly, but her words were clear. "Send a message to Earth immediately. Use the emergency diplomatic code. Tell them the children are about to play with fire." Reed understood. The code phrase meant that war was now inevitable, and human interests might soon be threatened. It was a warning that had not been used in over 50 years. As they watched the alien delegates storm out of the conference room, Reed wondered if the galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. Something that might surprise everyone, including the confident Keth warriors and the technologically advanced Valen. The negotiations had failed completely. War was coming. And for the first time in decades, Reed had the feeling that humanity might not be able to stay neutral much longer. The human research vessel Remembrance floated quietly in deep space. Far from any star system, Dr. Emma Walsh sat in her small office, surrounded by data screens and old books. She was writing the official history of human involvement in galactic affairs for the Council archives. Most aliens thought this was boring work, but Emma found the story fascinating. She had been studying humanity's strange reputation among the galaxy's species for 3 years. Everyone called humans weak and cowardly, but Emma suspected there was more to the story. Her research had uncovered some interesting facts that most aliens did not know. Emma's computer beeped with an incoming message. It was from her old professor, Dr. Marcus Chen, who had retired after 40 years as a diplomat. She had asked him to visit the ship for an interview about the early days of human galactic contact. "Dr. Walsh," Chen said as he entered her office. 2 days later, he was an elderly man with gray hair and tired eyes. I heard you wanted to know about our history with the aliens. Emma activated her recording device. The galaxy sees humans as natural peacekeepers, but also as weak. I want to understand how that reputation started. Chun sat down slowly. It began when we first joined the galactic community 150 years ago. Earth had just finished. The Third World War. 20 billion people had died in that conflict. Cities were destroyed, oceans were poisoned, and entire regions became uninhabitable. The aliens knew about this war? Emma asked. Oh yes, Chen replied. When the first alien scouts found Earth, they discovered a planet trying to rebuild itself. We had nearly destroyed our own species with nuclear weapons, biological warfare, and environmental damage. The survivors were working desperately to fix what they had broken. Emma had read about the Third World War in school, but hearing Chun describe it made the horror feel real. How did that affect our entry into galactic society? The aliens saw us as a cautionary tale, Chun explained. Here was a species that had actually fought a war so terrible that it almost ended their civilization. Most galactic species had never experienced anything like that. Their wars were about territory or resources or honor. Our war was about survival itself. Chun stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. The Galactic Council decided that humans might be useful as mediators precisely because we understood the true cost of conflict. They thought our experience with total war would make us natural peacekeepers. But that's not how other species see us now, Emma observed. No, Chun said sadly. Over time, they forgot why we became diplomats. They only saw that humans always chose negotiation over fighting. When conflicts arose, we would spend months or years talking until we found peaceful solutions. Other species began to think this was because we were afraid to fight. Emma pulled up some files on her computer. I've been looking at the military records. Human space forces seem much larger than necessary for a peaceful species. Chun smiled. For the first time since arriving. That's the part most aliens don't understand. We don't avoid war because we're weak. We avoid war because we know exactly what it costs and exactly how to fight it. He returned to his chair and leaned forward. Every human colony has defense plans. Every trade route is monitored by our intelligence services. Every diplomatic mission includes military advisors. We've spent 150 years preparing for the war we hope never to fight. Emma was surprised by this revelation. The galaxy doesn't know this? They see what we want them to see, Chun replied. Diplomatic ships that carry hidden weapons. Trade vessels that can become military transports in hours. Research stations that monitor enemy communications. The aliens think we're naive pacifists. But we're actually the most strategically prepared species in the galaxy. Chun activated his own datapad and showed Emma some classified files. Look at this. During the Krex Rebellion 20 years ago, human merchant ships were positioned perfectly to evacuate civilians from war zones. The aliens thought it was lucky timing. Actually, we had been tracking the rebellion's progress for months and had ships ready. Emma studied the data with growing amazement. Why keep this secret? Because peace works better when people think you're harmless, Chun explained. If other species knew how prepared we were for war, they might decide to attack us first. Our reputation for weakness is actually our best defense. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Earth Command. Emma read it quickly, then looked up at Chun with concern. The negotiations at Nexus Prime have failed, she said. The Keth Empire and Valen Federation are going to war. Chun's expression became serious. How bad is the fighting? Emma continued. Reading the reports, 3 Valen colonies have been attacked. The Keth are using their traditional invasion tactics. Civilian casualties are already in the thousands. And humanity's response? Official neutrality, as usual. But Admiral Morrison's fleet has been ordered to monitor the situation from nearby systems. Chun nodded grimly. Monitoring. That's what we call it when we position our forces for rapid response. Over the next several days, Emma watched the war escalate through news reports and military updates. The Keth Empire was winning the early battles through surprise attacks and overwhelming force. The Valen Federation was retreating but preparing their advanced weapons for counterattacks. Other galactic species were staying out of the conflict, as expected. The Zeth Republic had closed their borders. The Crystal Confederation was offering to mediate, but both sides had rejected their help. Everyone was waiting to see how the war would develop. The galaxy is treating this like entertainment, Emma told Chun during another conversation. They're betting on which side will win, but nobody wants to get involved. That's how most species handle war, Chun replied. They see it as a natural part of galactic politics. Strong civilizations expand, weak ones are conquered, and life continues. But humans see it differently. We see war as a disease that spreads if not stopped quickly, Chun said. The Third World War taught us that conflicts have a way of growing beyond their original causes. What starts as a border dispute can become a threat to entire civilizations. Emma was beginning to understand the deeper truth about human strategy. So our peaceful reputation is really a cover for military preparation? Not a cover exactly, Chun corrected. We genuinely prefer peace. But we prepare for war because we know that sometimes peace can only be preserved through strength. The galaxy will learn this eventually. When? Chun looked out at the stars again. When someone makes the mistake of threatening human civilians. That's the line we've never allowed anyone to cross. If the Keth or Valen attack human colonies, they'll discover what happens when you force a peaceful species to fight. Emma felt a chill at the certainty in his voice. For the first time, she understood that humanity's reputation for weakness might be the galaxy's biggest misunderstanding. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Determination, watching the tactical displays show the war between the Keth Empire and Valen Federation. For 3 weeks, she had maintained humanity's official position of neutrality. While her fleet stayed positioned in nearby systems, the war was getting worse every day. What had started as border disputes had become total warfare. Both sides were now targeting civilian populations and destroying entire colonies. The galaxy's other species watched from a safe distance, placing bets on which side would win. Morrison's communications officer, Lieutenant David Park, approached with the latest reports. Admiral, the Keth have destroyed 2 more Valen research stations. The Valen responded by bombing a Keth military academy. Over 10,000 casualties on both sides. Morrison nodded grimly. She had been expecting this escalation. When species went to war for honor and territory instead of survival, they rarely understood when to stop fighting. The conflict would continue until one side was completely defeated or both sides exhausted themselves. Any word from Earth Command? Morrison asked. They confirm our orders to maintain neutrality and monitor the situation, Park replied. The diplomatic corps is still trying to arrange new peace talks, but neither side is interested. Morrison had served in the human fleet for 25 years. She had watched her species avoid conflict after conflict, always choosing diplomacy over warfare. Most of her fellow officers were proud of humanity's peaceful reputation, but Morrison sometimes wondered if their restraint was mistaken for weakness. The bridge's main screen showed a map of the war zone. Red dots marked Keth positions while blue dots showed Valen forces. Green dots represented neutral territories, including several human colonies that were uncomfortably close to the fighting. Admiral, called the sensor operator. We're receiving an emergency transmission from Haven's Rest colony. Morrison's attention focused immediately. Haven's Rest was a peaceful human settlement in the Outer Rim, home to about 50,000 colonists. Most were families who had left Earth seeking a quiet life among the stars. The colony had no military value and was clearly marked as neutral territory. "Put it through," Morrison ordered. The transmission was broken and filled with static. "Through." The interference, Morrison could hear panic and explosions in the background. "This is Colony Administrator Brown on Haven's Rest. We are under attack by unknown vessels. They're targeting civilian areas. We have no defenses. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help immediately." Morrison felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Can we identify the attacking ships?" The sensor operator worked frantically at his console. "The transmission is too weak to get clear data, but the attack patterns match Keth military doctrine." "Confirm." "That." Morrison ordered sharply. Minutes passed while the crew analyzed the signals. Morrison watched the tactical display, noting how far Haven's Rest was from any legitimate military target. There was no strategic reason to attack the colony, unless someone wanted to send a message. "Confirmed, Admiral," the sensor operator reported. 3 Keth battle cruisers are bombarding Haven's Rest. They're using heavy plasma weapons on residential areas. Morrison closed her eyes for a moment. In all her years of service, she had never faced this situation. Humanity had stayed neutral in dozens of conflicts, but no one had ever attacked human civilians before. The galaxy's respect for human diplomatic immunity had always protected their colonies. "How long until we can reach Haven's Rest?" she asked. "At maximum speed, 18 hours, replied the navigation officer. "Too long," Morrison said quietly. She knew that 18 hours would be far too late to save the colonists. The Keth attack was clearly intended to destroy the colony completely. Lieutenant Park received another transmission. "Admiral, we're getting reports from other human colonies in the region. The Keth are broadcasting a message claiming that humans have been secretly supplying weapons to the Valen Federation." Morrison understood immediately. General Thrak was trying to justify his attack on civilians by claiming humans were not really neutral. It was a lie, but it would sound believable to other Keth warriors who already despised humanity's peaceful reputation. "The Keth think we won't respond," Morrison realized. "They believe we're too weak to retaliate for an attack on our own people." The final transmission from Haven's Rest came 2 hours later. Administrator Brown's voice was barely audible over the sound of destruction. "This is our last message. The colony is lost. Tell our families on Earth that we tried to build something peaceful here. Tell them we never gave up hope that... The transmission ended in static. Morrison stood in silence on her bridge. Around her, the crew waited for orders. For 3 weeks they had watched aliens kill each other while maintaining strict neutrality. Now 50,000 human civilians were dead, murdered by warriors who thought humanity would do nothing in response. "Lieutenant Park," Morrison said in a voice that was completely calm, "send a message to both the Keth Empire and the Valen Federation. Tell them they have 48 hours to agree to an immediate ceasefire and withdrawal to pre-war borders." Park looked confused. "Admiral, Earth Command hasn't authorized us to make ultimatums." "They have now," Morrison replied. "Continue the message. Tell both governments that if they refuse our terms, they will learn why humanity doesn't fight wars. We end them." The crew exchanged glances. They had never heard their admiral speak with such cold certainty. Morrison had always been known for her careful adherence to regulations and diplomatic protocols. "Send the message on all frequencies." Morrison continued. "Make sure every ship in both fleets receives it." While Park transmitted the ultimatum, Morrison activated her personal communicator and sent an encrypted message directly to Earth Command. She used authorization codes that had not been activated in over 50 years. The response from the galaxy was exactly what Morrison expected. General Thrak publicly mocked the human ultimatum, calling it the desperate threat of a species too cowardly to enforce their own words. He announced that the Keth Empire would continue their righteous war against Valen expansion and would destroy any human colonies that interfered. The Valen Federation was more diplomatic, but equally dismissive. Minister Ellen sent a formal response expressing regret for the unfortunate incident at Haven's Rest, while making it clear that the war would continue until the Keth threat was eliminated. Other galactic species reacted with amusement or contempt. The news networks treated the human ultimatum as a joke, wondering what the pacifist humans could possibly do to enforce their demands. Morrison spent the next 48 hours preparing her fleet while receiving constant updates from Earth, ships that had been on routine patrol across the galaxy suddenly changed course toward the war zone. Diplomatic vessels revealed hidden weapon systems and dropped their peaceful facades. Trade ships activated military transponders that had been dormant for decades. As the deadline approached, Morrison received final confirmation from Earth Command. Operation Peacekeeper was authorized. Humanity's century of preparation was about to be revealed. All human vessels, this is Admiral Morrison, she announced as the 48 hours expired. Operation Peacekeeper is now active. Show them what happens when you force a peaceful species to war. Commander Alex Rivera stood on the bridge of the human battlecruiser Justice, watching his tactical display as Operation Peacekeeper began. Around him, ships that had been disguised as civilian vessels for years were dropping their fake identifications and revealing their true military nature. All units report ready, announced his communications officer. The Determination is leading the first wave against Keth positions. Rivera had been waiting for this moment his entire career. He had joined the human fleet 15 years ago, knowing that his ships were designed for a war that might never come. Every human officer understood that their peaceful reputation was both a shield and a weapon. Target confirmed, called his weapons officer. Keth forward base at Gamma Station. 3 battle cruisers and multiple support vessels. Rivera studied the enemy positions. The Keth had built their base exactly as their military doctrine predicted. It was designed for direct assault and honorable combat between warrior fleets. They expected enemies to attack from the front with maximum force and courage. Begin electronic warfare protocols, Rivera ordered. Show them how humans really fight. The battle for Gamma Station lasted only 6 hours, but it changed everything. The galaxy thought it knew about human warfare. Instead of the heroic ship-to-ship combat that Keth warriors expected, the humans used coordinated strikes that destroyed the enemy's ability to function as a military force. Rivera's ships did not engage in single combat with Keth vessels. Instead, they used precise attacks on communication systems, weapon control centers, and life support networks. Within the first hour, the Keth fleet was blind, confused, and unable to coordinate their response. Their flagship is requesting surrender. Terms, reported the communications officer. Grant them, Rivera replied. Send medical teams to help with their wounded. Make sure they understand that we're not here to destroy them, just to stop the fighting. This pattern repeated throughout the war zone. Human forces revealed themselves from hidden positions and systematically dismantled the military capabilities of both sides. Ships that had pretended to be merchant vessels for decades showed their true nature as sophisticated military platforms. Captain Maria Santos led the liberation of Haven's Rest, arriving at the destroyed colony with a mixed fleet of human warships. The Keth occupation force had expected to face desperate human civilians seeking revenge for their murdered families. Instead, Santos demonstrated the difference between human and alien approaches to warfare. Her ships targeted the Keth military installations with surgical precision while broadcasting surrender terms in the Keth language. She offered medical aid to wounded Keth soldiers and safe passage to any who wanted to leave peacefully. This is Captain Santos to all Keth forces on Haven's Rest, she announced. You have 1 hour to evacuate your military personnel. We will not harm anyone who surrenders, but we will destroy any weapon system that remains active. The Keth ground. Commander Colonel Brock initially refused to believe that humans would show mercy to the killers of their own people. Keth military culture taught that enemies should be destroyed completely, and he expected the same treatment from human forces. Human Commander, Brock transmitted back, "Your people were weak and deserve death. We will fight you to our last warrior." Santa's response surprised everyone listening. "Colonel Brock, we know you were following orders from your superiors. We hold no personal hatred for you or your soldiers. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to galactic conventions for prisoners of war." The fighting that followed showed the galaxy something they had never seen before. Human soldiers moved with the precision of a species that had perfected warfare through necessity, not glory. They used tactics that minimized casualties on both sides while achieving their objectives quickly and efficiently. The most shocking aspect was humanity's restraint, even in combat. While liberating the ruins of Haven's Rest, human forces went to extraordinary lengths to avoid damaging anything that could be rebuilt. They provided medical care to wounded Keth soldiers and established refugee camps for displaced civilians. Admiral Morrison, coordinating the overall operation from the Determination, received regular reports from her commanders. Each battle followed the same pattern. Human forces would appear suddenly, overwhelm enemy positions with superior tactics and coordination, then offer generous surrender terms. "Admiral," reported her intelligence officer, "we're intercepting communications from both Keth and Valen. High commands. They're requesting immediate ceasefire negotiations." Morrison was not surprised. The war had lasted 3 weeks before human intervention, but only 72 hours after Operation Peacekeeper began. Both sides were ready to talk peace. General Thrak, who had mocked human weakness just days earlier, sent a personal message to Morrison. His tone was completely different from his earlier arrogance. "Admiral Morrison, the Keth Empire recognizes that we underestimated human military capabilities. We are prepared to discuss terms for ending this conflict immediately." Minister Ellen of the Valen Federation sent a similar message. "We did not understand the true nature of human strategic thinking. The Valen Federation requests your assistance in arranging peace negotiations." Morrison called a meeting of her senior commanders to discuss the enemy requests. They gathered in the Determination's main conference room, the same type of room where human diplomats had been trying to prevent this war just weeks earlier. "Both sides want to stop fighting," Morrison announced. "The question is whether we accept their surrender or continue until they're completely defeated." Commander Rivera spoke first. "Our mission was to end the war, not to conquer territory. If they're willing to stop fighting, we should accept." Captain Santos agreed. "We've proven our point. The galaxy now knows that human peaceful behavior is a choice, not weakness. Continuing the war would only create more casualties." Morrison nodded. This was exactly the response she had expected from her officers. Humans fought wars to achieve specific objectives, not for glory or revenge. Once their goals were met, they stopped fighting. "Send messages to both governments," Morrison ordered. "We will accept their surrender and arrange peace negotiations. But the terms will be non-negotiable. Complete withdrawal to pre-war borders, reparations for all civilian casualties, and acceptance of human mediation for future disputes." The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated a completely different approach to warfare. Other species fought until their enemies were destroyed or until they were exhausted. Humans fought until peace was restored, then immediately began working to rebuild what had been damaged. News reports struggled to explain what they were seeing. Military analysts had predicted that human intervention would escalate the conflict into a larger galactic war. Instead, the fighting had ended in less than 4 days, with minimal casualties and both sides actively seeking peace terms. General Thrak, broadcasting from his retreating flagship, gave an interview that became famous throughout the galaxy. "We thought strength meant the willingness to fight," he said. "The humans showed us that true strength means fighting only when necessary. And when you do fight, ending it quickly and completely." 6 months after the war ended, Ambassador Lisa Torres sat in the rebuilt council chambers on Nexus Prime. The same room where peace negotiations had failed so completely was now hosting the signing of the Galactic Peace Accords. This time, humanity was not dismissed as weak mediators but recognized as the primary architects of galactic stability. Torres looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. General Thrak of the Keth Empire sat quietly, no longer the arrogant warrior who had mocked human diplomacy. Minister Ellen of the Valen Federation spoke respectfully when addressing human representatives. The other galactic species watched the proceedings with new understanding of humanity's role in their community. "The final terms are acceptable to all parties," Torres announced. "The Keth Empire will withdraw to pre-war borders and provide reparations for civilian casualties. The Valen Federation will share territorial claims data to prevent future disputes. Both governments accept human mediation for any conflicts that arise in the next 50 years. Captain James Reed, now promoted to Admiral, sat beside Torres as an observer. He remembered the humiliation of those failed negotiations just months earlier, when alien delegates had treated humans as irrelevant peacekeepers. The galaxy's attitude had changed completely after Operation Peacekeeper, after the formal ceremony. General Thrak approached Torres privately. The proud Keth warrior looked older than his years, carrying the weight of a defeat that had taught his entire species a lesson about the nature of strength. "Ambassador Torres," Thrak said carefully, "I owe you and your people an apology. We thought strength meant the willingness to fight. You showed us that true strength means fighting only when necessary, and when you do fight, ending it quickly." Torres studied the alien general with interest. "What will the Keth Empire do now?" "We are adopting human military doctrines," Thrak admitted. "Our war colleges are studying your tactical approaches. We want to learn how to achieve objectives without unnecessary destruction. Your species fights like gardeners removing weeds, efficient, methodical, and thorough." Minister Ellen joined their conversation, her pale blue skin showing the stress marks that Valen displayed when deeply affected by events. "The Valen Federation has reached similar conclusions. We had superior technology, but inferior strategy. Human warfare is not about winning battles, but about ensuring peace." Torres nodded diplomatically. "We hope this experience will lead to better understanding between all our species." Later that day, Torres met with Dr. Emma Walsh, who had been documenting the war's aftermath for the historical archives. Walsh had spent months interviewing participants from all sides, trying to understand how humanity's intervention had changed galactic politics so dramatically. "The other species are still trying to understand what happened," Walsh reported. "They keep asking how humans developed such advanced military capabilities while maintaining a peaceful reputation." "What do you tell them?" Torres asked. "The truth. That we never stopped preparing for war, even while we worked for peace. Every diplomatic mission included intelligence gathering. Every trade agreement provided strategic positioning. The galaxy saw what we wanted them to see." Torres walked to the window overlooking the station's main docking bay. Human ships were now a common sight at Nexus Prime, no longer disguised as civilian vessels, but openly displaying their military nature. The galaxy had learned to respect human strength, but Torres wondered if they truly understood its source. Admiral Morrison arrived at the station 2 days later, commanding a small fleet that included the rebuilt colony ship for Haven's Rest. The destroyed human settlement was being reconstructed with help from both Keth and Valen governments, who were providing resources as part of their reparation agreements. "How are the colonists adjusting?" Torres asked as she met Morrison at the docking bay. "Better than expected," Morrison replied. they understand that their sacrifice changed everything. The families who lost members at Haven's Rest are being remembered as the people who finally showed the galaxy what happens when you attack human civilians. Morrison had become the most famous military officer in human history, but she carried the burden of knowing that humanity's peaceful reputation was forever changed. They remained committed to diplomacy, but everyone now knew what lay beneath their preference for peace. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Morrison asked as they walked through the station. "We had no choice," Torres replied. 50,000 civilians were murdered because aliens thought we were too weak to respond. If we had done nothing, every human colony would have become a target. They visited the memorial wall that had been constructed in the station's central plaza. The names of all Haven's Rest colonists were inscribed in multiple languages with a simple message: they died believing in peace. "We fought to honor their faith." General Thrak was standing before the memorial when Torres and Morrison arrived. The Keth general had been visiting the wall every day since arriving at the station, a practice that surprised everyone who knew Keth military culture. "I ordered the attack on Haven's Rest," Thrak said without turning around. "I thought humans would respond with diplomatic protests, as they always had before. I did not understand that your restraint was a choice, not weakness." Morrison studied the alien general with calm eyes. "What did you learn from this war?" "That the most dangerous enemies are those who do not want to fight," Thrak replied. "Your people avoided conflict for over a century, not because you feared war, but because you understood its true cost. When we forced you to fight, you showed us warfare perfected by a species that knows exactly why peace is worth preserving." Over the following weeks, the effects of the war continued to reshape galactic society. The Keth Empire began focusing on defensive strategies rather than conquest. Their military academies started teaching human tactical doctrines. Alongside traditional warrior codes, the Valen Federation shifted from aggressive expansion to technological cooperation. They offered to share their advanced research with human scientists in exchange for strategic expertise. Minister Ellen publicly stated that the Valen had learned more about effective governance from human diplomats than from decades of their own political evolution. Other galactic species also changed their approaches to international relations. The threat of human intervention became a powerful force for peace, as no government wanted to face the species that could end wars in days rather than years. Dr. Walsh completed her historical analysis with a conclusion that surprised even her. "Humanity's greatest victory was not military," she wrote. "It was proving that a species could be both genuinely peaceful and devastatingly effective in war. The galaxy now understands that human restraint is not weakness, but wisdom." Admiral Reed took command of the new Human Defense Initiative, overseeing a network of openly military vessels stationed throughout human space. The era of disguised warships was over, replaced by an honest display of humanity's defensive capabilities. The rebuilt Haven's Rest colony became a symbol of human resilience and determination. Families returned to their homes, protected now by the knowledge that attacking human civilians would bring swift and decisive response from the most effective military force in the galaxy. Torres remained as humanity's chief diplomatic representative, but her role had fundamentally changed. No longer dismissed as a weak peacekeeper, she was now recognized as speaking for a species that could enforce its words with overwhelming force if necessary. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about the difference between those who could not fight and those who chose not to fight. Humanity had spent over a century building a reputation for peace, while secretly preparing for the war they hoped never to wage. When forced to reveal their true nature, they had shown that the most effective warriors were often those who understood war's purpose: to end conflict permanently and restore peace.